Welcome to the Accounting Arc Podcast, where analysis, reaction, and comedy collide to tackle the big topics from the world of accounting and beyond. Join our trio of transformation agents as they discuss the hottest topics in and out of the profession, from breaking down industry trends, to reacting to everyday events, to uncovering the hidden humor in numbers. With wisdom, insight, and a dash of levity, they're proving that accounting isn't just about the numbers. It's about life. Because after all, accounting is in everything. The Accounting Arc Podcast starts now.
Okay, so today's topic is a fun one. Welcome back to ARC. We're going to have a little bit of good comedic relief today. A couple of years ago, I proposed a conference talk called How to Be a Boss Without Being a Dick. And the conference I proposed it to actually changed it to, some more appropriate word outside of, profanity, which I understand. And I ended up presenting this, and it was a really good session with a lot of conversation around, how to appropriately deal with different situations. And, when you're holding people accountable, what does that look like? You don't have to actually be an asshole in any of this. You can be kind and still enforce boundaries, hold people accountable, push things forward. And also, many of us have not experienced that from our superiors. And so if you don't have a good role model, it's difficult to learn how to do this well. And so we're going to talk about this today. And so I know all of us have had recent interactions where we have felt like maybe we needed to be a dick or otherwise weren't trying to be, but we're coming across that way. So can you guys talk to any of those situations you've had recently?
Yeah, I've definitely been having to use the good cop, bad cop, and as the boss, I'm having to be the bad cop and let my team, some of the other managers, be the good cop on that. But I had to really send an email I sent it out to a whole bunch of people that were involved in planning engagements. And I was like, stop doing this, and this is irritating, and this is doing this, and this is doing that. And it was interesting to kind of see the reaction. Of course, the other key people, I had pre-planned it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna send something that's kind of scathing, and you guys play good cop and be like, this is why he's doing this is what's happening. And they had to gauge and measure, what the reaction was and help to properly set expectations.
Yeah, that's really tough. And I've had a recent situation where I was helping Nikki, my fiance, with an interaction with a client who was just being really difficult about answering the questions that she was asking. And, I helped her to put together an email to this client to say, hey, we have the same goal. I am here to help you to achieve your business goals. I'm not asking these questions to just be a pain in your ass. I'm really trying to support you and help you in achieving your goals. Please let me know if these are unclear, but here are the questions, and like I feel like sometimes in these types of situations, you kind of have to remind people like why we're having this conversation. Either we have the same goal, we care about their success or care about them not failing, and there's ways to kind of like, pull people back to say like, I'm not doing this just because I want to be a dick. I'm doing this because I want to help everybody to be successful.
Well, there's also a certain level of tact that has to go into those communications as well. And I always find that if I'm writing a difficult email like that, I start with common ground, right? And
Yep.
like you said, remind them why you care, right? So that's a good way to start with common ground or your why, or, figuring out, okay, so like a couple months ago, this bad thing happened and neither one of us want this result. So let's talk about it and plan for a better result, right? And kind of find that wherever you agree and put it up first. Sometimes that doesn't happen, right? Like maybe you have an employee you're managing who is not good, right? And you don't have common ground and you don't have a common goal. And you can say, look, I want you to be successful. currently you are not being successful. This is why, this is what we need to work on. And if you come at it from a tone of like underlying kindness and generosity and genuineness and not attack them as a human, generally you get better results. Not always though. Like I was yesterday telling people literal facts. Like I was pulling KPIs out of a system and being like, here is the KPI for this month. And people were reacting to me as if I was telling them they were failing, right? Like, here's the KPI,
Right.
here's what you did. Doesn't add up, right? And I didn't say, hey, you messed up. Hey, you didn't do this right. Hey, you. I didn't use any of that language. I said, here are the results from last month. KPI goal. That's it. And people were reacting to me as if I was being a bit of a dick. And I had to push back and be like, and this is the tagline that I've come up with for my life right now. These are fact, not attacked, right? And I think that that's where people a lot of times will internalize things and don't know how to react. And so what I think I will do in the future, instead of sending those in text messages, and they weren't text messages, it was just, on Microsoft Teams, I will press the little video button and be like, hey, got the results from last month. I want to share it with you personally. I understand there were contributing factors to why this goal wasn't met. And also, here's the goal and here's what actually happened. And then have a conversation from there. And I think that that added human approach might be better received than just me messaging goal, actual KPI.
Yeah. And, something you said in there reminds me of another phrase that I've heard recently that I've really been thinking a lot about. And it's this phrase of kind, not nice, because I think there's a lot of confusion around how to be kind as opposed to being nice, because nice, a lot of times you would think about like not making the person necessarily feel bad by sharing those facts. You might tell somebody good job, even though they really haven't done a good job. Maybe it was good effort, but not a good job. And, so being kind is about, being empathetic and compassionate, but also giving the information, the facts that will help to, address whatever the issue is that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I totally agree. And finding ways to like work through those things, like Donnie, you mentioned having to send some really difficult emails to the team, right? That will always happen in a leadership role. And it can even happen when you're not in a leadership role that you have to send an email like that to a leader and be like, hey, this particular behavior is yielding X result that I don't like, or that I need help with, or that the client isn't happy with, or whatever other feedback you have to give that's difficult. And you can do that very kindly, where you can say, this is going to make us better. This is going to yield better results. We all need to hold ourselves accountable to different pieces of this and outline it in a very generous and kind way. And also, that's not always nice. But doing the nice thing sometimes equals being fake. And I know, none of us do that very well.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that was one of the other things I learned about when I'm communicating that. So one of the things I also do is at the very beginning, instead of having to go through all the kind of the flowery the way you described it, I'll just put this is a coaching point.
Mhm.
Or this is the thing we can learn from, and then caveat it with that, which my team now knows when I do that, it's really about kind of that growth rather than just picking at stuff. Or the other one is to say, I'm going to be really blunt about this, but also to add to that, if it's especially if it's email, but I'm not upset. And so I actually just had a different email where I had to set it. These are some things that I think need to happen. When you read this, it sounds like I'm upset, but please don't put the upset tone in this. And then use that as the opener to then give some very, very blunt, like, this is wrong, that needs to change, this has to happen, that is going on.
Yeah. Well, and I think holistically, part of my thoughts around this is you also need a culture of generous assumptions, right? And
Yeah.
if you have a team that trusts you, and that works well with you and understands that your heart is in the right place, then you get less of that reactive, I am upset, like I feel like you're attacking me, and more of the, oh, okay, yeah, like this will make me better. I can do this. You're right. I didn't do the thing I was supposed to or committed to or whatever else it is in that situation.
Yeah, and that's one of those aspects of not being a dick also comes with approaching challenges or issues with individuals. A lot of times people end up being a dick because they assume the worst in that person's intention or action or inaction. And when you assume the best around, like, they didn't not do that step intentionally, they didn't do that step possibly for a reason. So approaching those situations with positive intent allows you to approach it with kindness and not as a dick.
Right. And I do that all the time. I will say, hey, my generous assumption is X, right? Like you missed this deadline. We need to figure out when it will actually be completed. My generous assumption is you missed it because you were working on this other thing that I know is on your plate and snowballed in a way that wasn't expected. Next time, I need you to communicate earlier that you're going to miss a deadline. And I need, to be able to have time to talk to the client about it instead of having to backtrack and deal with whatever ramifications come down the line, right? And so it is a kind of 1-2 punch where it's like my generous assumption is this was absolutely not intentional. I don't think you forgot. I also think you were buried. My expectation in the future is that you will be doing it this way. And even if you are going to miss a deadline, which happens to everybody, like it happens to all of us, there are situations where we have family stuff come up or we have work stuff come up or we literally lose track of time. And it's like, oh no, I am not going to meet that deadline I set for myself by tomorrow because this is way more difficult than I expected. You just have to communicate it and know what the expectations are of your team around you. And I have had people on my team below me send me messages and be like, hey, I was expecting you to review this yesterday. I see it wasn't reviewed. My generous assumption is you were busy with other really high level stuff. Is it possible to get done today, or do I need to pull someone else in? And to me, that is the best type of upward management, right? Because I can take that and own it and say, you are correct. I did not get to it yesterday because of whatever else happened. And also, I will likely not get to it today. So please pull in someone else on the team that's capable of doing this work.
It's funny you mentioned that situation because that was exactly the situation I just responded to, where someone dumped a 40-page document on me for review and was like, can you get this done by the end of the week? And then they were even like, oh, can you get this done? Well, can you get this done in 2 weeks? And I'm like, did you look at my schedule? I'm literally in meetings pretty much every day. So if you're going to dump something that big on me, I am not going to get that done in that one unless you scheduled pre-scheduled time.
Mm-hmm.
But a caveat of that too with here are the other ways that you could have got this done without dumping on me all at once. If you had run pieces by me as you were working on them to get confirmation it's in the right direction or you're doing this correctly, like that, or so that's something that I could do. So since you're mentioning managing up, that was the technique I gave them was give me the option to start to pre-review things so that at the end with the 40-page document, I'm just looking how you put everything together. I already have reviewed the individual pieces.
So neither of you would have preferred just getting an email that said, just bubbling this to the top of your inbox?
Probably not the best way to get my attention. But also when people do that, I assume the message is they are not getting enough attention. And so I find ways to give them more attention in other ways. And we also have very specific meeting structure for issue identification and conversations and tasks. And so if it is something that only came through an email and was not discussed in an actual meeting and was not actually put on my plate, there's other issues with them not following process. So if I get those emails, it's generally from, someone else, not my team. Normally salespeople that like want my attention.
So I actually asked my team to do that, to purposely do that when because I operate a lot out of my inbox, which includes things from our workflow management system. So
Right.
I asked them to do that because I'm like, if it went below the screen, it's probably out of my purview. So if you do need it, bring it back up and just say bring it back up. So I'm actually okay with that, but that's because it's an established norm. And I've
Right.
told them
Yep.
it's not this passive aggressive thing that they're doing to get
Yeah,
it to
yeah.
the top.
Do you ever use a tool called Boomerang in your inbox?
Oh
Mm-mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
do.
Gmail actually
So
has that built in too.
they do, but it basically you just set it like, hey, remind me about this in a week,
Oh,
and then
that's built
it'll,
into Outlook. It's
yeah.
a feature.
But anyways, it's really nice when that's the way that you're managing work because you can be like, okay, I know I'm not going to look at this today, but I know in a few days I'm going to care about this and I'm going to forget. So let me just set this to go back up,
Yeah, I do
show
use
up
that.
again.
That's follow-up
Yeah.
flags in Outlook. I do that.
I think in accounting that we too often forget that we have to put our own mask on first, like in an airplane, right? Put our own mask on first before we help others. And our whole thing is, oh, there's clients. I got to help the clients. I got to do all this stuff. And we're giving so much of ourselves that we're not taking that time to take care of ourselves. It's part of the reason why at the center, we created this whole personal resilience program, which is really for you to be that strong rock and foundation for the clients, you need to be solid yourself first. So it really is a matter of taking care of ourselves, and then we can take care of others. In fact, we can take care of more others the stronger that we are as a foundation. And that's also why a lot of what we do is based in teams, because then even if you're faltering, some of the teammates can jump in to cover or to allow you the time to rest so that you can rest, but we're still holding everybody up. So that's why I think working together in a team is so important, as well as taking care of yourself.
So I think there's a lot of tech that can help with management stuff, but I also think there's nothing that replaces actual conversations and making sure that people can hear your tone. And, there are times you need written documentation. And so doing things like Donnie said and putting in, hey, my tone is constructive criticism. My tone is let's collaborate. My tone is I'm really pissed off right now. Whatever your tone actually is, telling them that so that they understand how to read it and understand, right? There are instances where you don't have to be underlying nice to everybody. It is okay to get angry. Like that is a totally normal human emotion. What is not okay is treating others poorly because of your anger, right? So it's okay to tell someone like, hey, this really upset me because you decided to go on a snowboarding trip for a week and left me hanging on this project, which led to a really upset client. And then I pulled 2 all-nighters to save your butt. Like that is not acceptable behavior. I am not okay with that. You cannot continue to do that and maintain employment. That is one way to approach it, right? You don't have to be like, you are a problem. You make bad decisions.
Right.
You are an idiot, and express all of your anger in an attacking way.
Yeah, and that's
Until
oh,
it's a pattern, and then I do call that out. Because I'm like, you are the only one doing this. This is repeated behavior. This needs to stop.
Well, I think there's a difference between calling out the behavior and saying this was not a good decision that you made and this is unacceptable, and saying you are a problem, right? And I think if you
it's the
have someone on your
personal
team,
shots.
right, that is continuously making bad decisions and you're out of generous assumptions for them, then that's when you put them on a performance improvement plan and you try to coach them into better behavior. And if they can't do it, then they're out, right? Because we all work in businesses, right? And so it's a little bit of a you can only do so much. People have to do stuff as well, but you don't have to be mean about it, right? You can very clearly state, like, your priorities are not the priorities of the company right now, right? Like, your priorities are very clearly like travel, partying, fun. Great. Go live your life, enjoy your life. Just don't do it on my dime. Instead of saying something like, well, you're an alcoholic and you have serious mental health issues and you're not okay and you are very clearly a problem. So, like, go, right? Like, those are two different things, right? Um, and so I think that it is very interesting when you start looking at language and how people receive it when they interpret it as a personal attack versus separating it to decision making and priorities and how they do things versus who they are as a person, right? And that also makes it hard because I mean, I tend to like everybody. It's very hard to find somebody that I'm like, oh, I don't like you. Like, you're a problem as a human, right? And so when we have people on the team that are not performing, historically, I struggled with that because it's like, I really like you. Like, I think you're a wonderful person. I really want you to be successful. I think you have a ton of potential. And also, you're making all these decisions and you're doing all these things that are hurtful to the team, hurtful to our client relationships, are not productive. And separating those things has helped me quite a bit, at least being able to have those conversations without it being received as a personal attack, and also make the decisions that have to be made instead of just keeping people because I like them.
Same here.
Without a doubt. And one of the challenges that you brought up early, Liz, is this idea that early in our career, we're kind of a little bit at the mercy of the people that we work with in learning how to become somebody who can give good feedback or constructive feedback and these things. And all too often, people have not been modeled it really well by their bosses or managers or supervisors. And then eventually one day they find themselves in the seat as a boss or a manager or a supervisor, simply mirroring the behaviors that they were subjected to. And it's something that organizations probably could really benefit from spending some time teaching people how to effectively give good feedback without being a dick.
Yeah, well, and if you are at a firm where you don't feel like you have a good role model, go read Brene Brown. Just read her books, internalize like the psychological research that she's done and the way that she's looked at the workplace, and understand that there are places and there are people who are looking at this from a way to be better versus just repeating historical wrongs. Right. I cannot tell you how many conversations I have had with managers that come onto my team out of large public accounting firms who are absolute dicks, and they have extremely high expectations. And if you don't meet that expectation, you are the problem. And their defense is always, well, if I did that in public accounting, like in my big firm days, or, and they'll name drop their big firm name. If I did that in my whatever days, I would have been like fired immediately, or I would have been taken off every big job, or I would have been demoted, or, I would have been the problem. And it's like, well, you were never the problem. And the fact that you were treated that way and you internalized that and became this extremely high performer that's now anxiety ridden and an asshole to everyone else is because of that trauma. So do you really want to do that to someone else?
Completely agree on that one. That's one of the things we've been very intentional about in creating our culture as well, is that you don't have to manage in that way. You really should be inspiring people to do better, and you should model that behavior.
And if they're not capable of doing better or they don't want to do better, that is also okay. They just don't have a place on the team. But telling them that that's not okay and there's something wrong with them because that's how they operate is not, that is definitely not okay.
Well, or from what you said too, the other thing that we found, because it's sometimes it's not necessarily that they don't want to do better, but we're expecting them to move up, but really they need to stay where they are. And a lot of times I think our expectations, especially if we were like the person, we're like, oh, you have so much potential, you could do more. And I'm finding I'm having to go, actually, maybe you can't or don't want to, and that's okay too. But that means you're staying where you are, And we've had several situations now where we've had to re-level set. This person is going to be a lifetime
Yeah.
senior,
Mhm.
and we need to reset our expectation around them.
Yeah,
It's very
and
true.
that's an important conversation that I think a lot of organizations don't have. There becomes this expectation that like you get promoted based on how many times you spin around the sun. And that's just, should not be a thing. You should be able to have those conversations. Like
Mhm.
promotions are based on your ability to, own these certain skills or behaviors or achievements and whether you've been here 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years, that is not really relevant to your trajectory through an organization. But all too often you see these organizations that just have this like, promotion based on years of service or even minimum years of service before you can be promoted into certain things. And, those are conversations that people need to have, in a very candid and matter of fact way that like, just because it's your work anniversary doesn't mean you get to be a supervisor.
Yeah. Well, and I think we know in this industry in particular, there are certain personalities that do very, very well in management and others that hate it, right? And
Yep.
it is okay if you're somebody that hates that, right? Like being an
Yeah.
extreme technical specialist can get you just as far without having to manage people if that's something that drags you down. Like I have someone on my team right
Without a
now
doubt.
who is just drained by people management and is not good at it, does not like that type of project management, is a very, very strong individual contributor and exceptional in so many ways that are very unique and easy to sell from like a consulting perspective and an ongoing basis. But if you put a team member under her, they're going to quit.
Yeah. And it's not good for them or the team members that you're going to subject to that situation.
Correct. Absolutely. And so, I think that it's okay to be self-aware about these things and ask for
Right.
your needs, even if someone else's expectation is different for you. Like they might be pushing you to promote into senior manager, like do all these things and do it the
Yeah.
traditional way. And you might be sitting there going, I don't want to. Like one of my close friends has been an accountant for close to 20 years, and she's an amazing CPA. She's a senior at a very traditional accounting firm, and they keep trying to promote her to manager, and she keeps saying no. She's like, I don't want that job. I don't like that job. I've done that job. I disliked it. I'm a senior for a reason. Like, just pay me my senior salary, give me my senior work. I will do it in half the time. I will enjoy my life and enjoy my family. And this is what I want. So stop. And they keep trying to promote her every year. She has these like long one-on-ones with the partner team, and they're like, but you could be partner one day. And she's like, why would I want that? This is not my goal. So this is your goal for me. Like just give me my work and leave me alone. And so, it's a very interesting conversation when somebody knows their own mind, knows where they want and what they feel like is success to them.
I had a boss a number of years ago who definitely fell into the category of dick more than not, unfortunately. And one of the things that he really struggled with, this was in a technology company, and we had help desk people who like answer the support calls, take support calls, and he was adamant that they should be working towards becoming system admins and system engineers, and they should not like have the desire to remain in a help desk role. And I had frequent debates with him around this idea of like, listen, if somebody tells me they want to be a rock star help desk support agent and they're going to be the best support agent in the world, I will support that till the day I die. Like, there's no reason why everybody who comes in here has to have this upward trajectory. And he was just adamant that was the culture that he wanted of everybody having an entrepreneurial mindset and wanting to move up throughout the organization. And it's just such a flawed philosophy of running an organization and managing teams.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work. Um, and I think the moral of the story, as we kind of wrap up this whole conversation, is that Positive intent and generous assumptions are very important on both sides. Training that into the team and giving that in feedback is very important. Communicating tone and communicating your why and the intention of the feedback is very important. Ensuring that you are not kind of ignoring your team members, right? And just letting them do whatever is very important. Making sure that you are actually thinking about development. That's another way you can be a dick, is just being like, oh, you're on your own, figure it out, right? Which is what our individual contributor does on the team, is she's not actually mean to people, more just like expects them to figure it all out themselves and gives them no support or help. Which is also kind of being a dick in a different way. But it's important to kind of pull all of that together and think about the way you're presenting things and think about the words you're using I statements. I feel as though, I believe this was missed. And then stating facts in a way that's not perceived as an attack, right? Making sure that you have that attention, or you're communicating and saying, generous assumption is you missed this goal because of XYZ, before you just give them the missed goal and have them get all defensive and like, but like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, don't care, still a fact, right? And I do care, of course. But my point is finding all of those ways to show your empathy and be vulnerable yourself, and receive feedback and give feedback with generous assumptions and positive intent.
I think to emphasize that, as we see more and more of this remote work, it becomes even more important through that, because you're not having that person face-to-face contact in the hallway at lunch. That helps to bring some of that clarity or create more of that rapport. So you need to over communicate. You need to make sure people are understanding intent in this remote environment, because if you're only communicating via instant messages and emails, then that even more is a risk of misconstrued intent or misunderstanding.
Yep. Well said. Absolutely. There was a cartoon years ago, I feel like, that was like, watch Dick run, watch Dick trip and fall, watch Dick get hurt, don't be a dick, or something like that. I feel like that's what we're going for here.
I like it.
That's a great way to end. So
I hope you can find that cartoon for the show notes.
I'm going to be searching for it.
And if not, create it with AI, please. Thank you.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.